Hi, my name is Blake Gore, and I'm a pen and ink miniaturist. And today I'm going to give you a short tutorial on how I draw tiny trees. But before we get into those techniques, I want to walk you through some of the materials that we're going to use for today. The first is my favorite paper, and that's Strathmore's Bristol Smooth Surface. And I love this paper for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's thick and durable. It's 100 pound, 270 GSM. It takes ink really well, but it doesn't suck up all the ink out of my markers, which is great. It's also acid free, and it is very kind to my pen nibs. Really good pens are not cheap. You want to take care of them. So a smooth surface like this Bristol really preserves the pen while making very fine, smooth lines. Let's talk a little bit about the instruments that we will use to draw our tiny tree today. Both are from Lyra. The first is the Aqua Brush Duo. Now this has two ends, but we are only going to use the brush tip end because it has a very fine tip where we can create some nice green details to get our tree started, and then move on to the Graduate Fineliner. Now this pen is great because it has a very fine nib, and we'll use that to outline the leaves and the trunk. So let's get into it. We want to begin by laying down a very light pencil sketch, thinking about how we want to group the leaves in bunches and where we want to leave gaps in the trees where you can see through. It gives a much more natural feel to the tree. Next, we'll start laying down ink using our lightest marker color. This is really important because unlike acrylic paints, for example, you're not going to be able to layer lighter colors over darker colors. So we need to start with the light and then add our darker colors for shading as we move forward. As we lay down these initial leaves, keep in mind that we want to make these leaf shapes very organic, very random. Lots of mistakes in tree drawing come back to people simply wanting to draw the individual leaves and using uniform shapes throughout the tree. We really want to break it up. If you look at shapes in nature, they're very random. So we want to make them have the illusion of leaves without drawing the individual leaves. So here we have our next layer of shadows. In a darker green, as you can see, the lighter green stays on the top of the branches and the bunches of leaves most of the time, and then the underside of the bunches is darker because that's where the shadow is, and then usually it's going to be darker towards the center of the tree too. So now we have a third layer of green that's just a little bit darker than the last, and you can start to see some depth here. Now it's time to add some color to the trunk. You can see there's a lighter gray initially, and now we're adding some darker gray there as we go up, and the shadow is hitting the trunk and the branches a little. Now it's time to remove that light pencil sketch that we had there in the beginning. Again, that's just a guide, so there may be some opportunities later in the sketch to add a little bit more and go outside of that outline, but that was just to give us an initial guide. Now it's time to go in with our fine liner. Now this is my favorite part of drawing trees because here is where I can really get down in the details. And again, I'm not trying to draw individual leaves. What I'm trying to do here is to give the illusion of organic shapes. And you can kind of see that I like to outline in kind of a broken pattern the bunches, and then go in where it's darker and add just a little bit more texture. And I think that gives a little bit more depth to the tree. Again, there are many different ways to draw trees. This is just one. There are times where I will draw the outline of these shapes in pen first and then go back in with color. But I think this is fun because I think that using the marker at the beginning tends to give more of a random shape around which I can use the fineliner. So here we're actually pretty close to being done, but many times there are just opportunities to kind of have a little bit more fun and add some extra details. So that's what I'm doing here is adding a few little random leaves that stick out a little bit further than those bunches. I think that gives it a more natural feel. And I'm using the same process, marker first, lighter color, then darker color marker, then the fineliner. And here's, I'm going in a little bit deeper and deciding to add kind of a darker bunch of leaves that are appearing from the back of the tree. Because remember, we're not just seeing the leaves that are sticking out to us, but sometimes we're seeing all the way through to the darker side of the tree. Here I'm just adding a little bit more of the dark fineliner to highlight some points of particular depth inside of the tree. And then finally, just adding a little ground. And like that, I think we're done. So again, this is Blake Gore. Happy tree drawing with Strathmore Bristol paper.